Okay, so in this video, I just want to break down my previous weekly astrology forecast for most of the month of July and go over, like correlating them with news stories, etc. from that week to see what of the forecasts actually came to fruition. Okay, the reason I'm doing this is to show that we are able to, question these things. We don't have to blindly follow the rules or think that, oh, this person said this, so yada, 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 okay? It's allowing us to question these things and to also understand validity where it's valid and also understand where things aren't valid. Okay, now in saying that, the way I do astrology is intuitively, and my guidance has been, and with any intuitive reading, that when you do those readings, you're only focusing on the most largest potential that could occur at the time that you're tuning in or doing that reading. Now, in doing that, there are other potentials that could occur as well, and you're only tuning into the largest one. So any free will choice that is made to move away from whatever that largest potential is can change its trajectory. So no matter who is doing an intuitive reading, no matter who they are, they're never going to be 100% right 100% of the time. That includes myself, okay? That's just not going to happen because you can't control people's free will choice. All right? So, and they're kind of pointing me towards now, they want to show that there are people out there that try to do this legitimately, okay? Where they see that there's something in this. They're tuning into something. They know that it's there. They understand that something is there. They're trying to do it legitimately versus there's a lot of other just crap and junk that exists out there that is just people like taking old things and just being like, oh, well, this was said back then and so we must believe it, and like all of this stuff, or like trying to purposely confuse people, or they just think that they can just jump in and start doing it and they just start spewing stuff that they, find online or whatever else, and they have no personal backing for it, right? They're just kind of putting it out there. And I'm not naming any names or doing any of that. The purpose of this is to just basically get people to question things and question those, that you're getting information from. It's not just spiritual stuff or astrology or whatever. It could be anything. Just question it to try to understand the validity. And I also don't have all of the answers. Everything that I'm putting out here is to my knowledge as of to date. Okay, August 4th, 2026. All right. And I don't know everything. And I am learning as I go. And I am putting everything out there on my journey as I go when I learn these things. Okay, as my knowledge base, as my work in doing this. All right, so this isn't something to say like, oh, look at me, only follow me, or something like that. If you want to, sure, obviously, but like, it's also just, they're reminding me again, they're just saying it's just to get you to question. I think the main reason is they see a lot of stuff that is out there where it's people just trying to manipulate others, make money off of others, do whatever, but there's real people out there with real integrity. They're actually trying to do this with their people's best interests at heart that get drowned out by the noise, basically. So, and it's even not just that, it's just everything else. Just question it. Plus, there's also almost like a maybe slightly scientific side to this where it's like proving the validity of certain things. It's like, okay, can you actually intuitively tune in and do this? Is there something about astrology that is legitimate? The only way we're going to truly understand that is to see and test it, right? To see that for what it is. So there's multiple different avenues for doing something like this. And I'm doing it with my own work to get people that, yes, you can question my stuff. You should question everything. And that I also want to see the results of the work that I do as well. I'm not just blindly believing stuff. I like to go in and see concrete things that come through, like what what I'm getting actually legitimately real. Okay, and actually see that for myself and also present that to others as well. All right, now how I do this is, look, I'm a lone wolf here, so I don't have people going out there looking at news stories and blah, blah, blah to corroborate these kinds of things. So I do use AI to do this for me. I take the transcript from the video and I put it in there with a prompt, and you can see on the screen there it says the prompt of what I want, and then I take I do the work portion of ChatGPT, which can do deep research, and it takes like half an hour at least for it to do these things. Okay, so it goes in there and actually looks this stuff up, compares it, blah, blah, blah. We'll see that. Well, I haven't fully read this entire thing, but it is up on my website for anybody to see. Another reason I do it this way, I put the prompt there, you have access to the video, you have access to everything that I have access to and everything that I've done. So you can go ahead and do this yourself, look it up yourself, or manually search the news stories yourself, relate them yourself, whatever. Another thing about using the AI is it's going to be, it's a bit critical too, in terms of what it finds and how it's going to rate things. Okay, so it's basically a third party, like a third party audit doing this. It's not just me going in there being like, oh, well, it's this and it's this to relate it. It's like, no, it's going out there, it's looking at things and it's questioning it. And we'll see that in the article that it does actually question things that exist there. And that's what I implore everybody else to do as well, is take this and question it at the same time. Now, a note that what I do is mundane astrology when I do these readings, meaning it's how it affects us geopolitically, economically, those types of ways. Okay, how it affects basically everyone. Okay, how our governments, the shit that they do, economics, trade, all of that stuff affects everyone across the world. Okay, and that's what comes through here, and that's what comes up in the news. So that is something that is, something that's provable, something that you can see. Number one is why I do that. Number two is simply because I don't usually do basically just like a collective, oh, for some people it could be this, for some people it could be that, it could go in this direction, that direction. Because it's not that there's anything necessarily wrong with those readings. They could help certain people. However, what I feel now, and my guidance on it now, is there's a lot of people, especially nowadays, especially with being stuck in fear a lot, seemingly now especially, with a lot of people kind of stuck in lower vibrations, that they don't, they listen to what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. So in doing those kinds of readings in that way, it can also just fall on deaf ears. The things that people need to hear, the things that would actually really help them, that because they're in a fear state, or because they don't want to hear those things, or they don't want to put in the work, or they don't want to whatever, they're not going to listen to that, and they're just going to listen to, oh, this is the happy one, that must be for me. It's like, okay. And even then, it's not about all doom and gloom saying, oh, well, this negative thing is going to happen. It's basic. Sometimes it's about things that you just need to, look at or question or put the work into, but yet nobody is willing to do that in some. And I'm not saying nobody, like there's obviously people that look at these things and they listen to themselves and how they feel while doing it and think like, oh, well, maybe this is for me in terms of this, right? There's people that do that. I'm not calling out everyone here, okay? So yeah, and another thing too is in doing this, if you find legitimacy in what I'm doing here or anything like that, and you want to follow me or whatever, that's fine. But do not put me on any kind of a pedestal at all whatsoever. I do not want that at all. This is my work. I'm putting it out there. But I am just like you. I'm just like everybody else. I am not perfect in any way, shape, or form. Okay, I am far from it. If I was perfect, I'd have six-pack abs and be out there doing other things. Okay, I'd be sexy enough to not be doing all the ordinary mundane stuff everybody else does, right? Okay, and maybe that's just describing a perfect body, but you know what I mean? Like we're all like in our yeah. Okay, I'm just an average guy. Okay, I'm just the same as everybody else. It's just that I've put in the work, the spiritual work, to be able to tune in intuitively to this stuff. I have daily practice, everything like that I do to do this, and anybody can do this. Okay, I've always said that. I've always said that. Okay, and this article is on my website now, mysticalmark.ca. You can go there, you can look it up. It's a July monthly astrology corroboration breakdown. Okay, now that I've kind of said all that I needed to say there, let's jump and dive in. And you might be thinking, oh, we're like 10 minutes in and you've just said all that. Well, for people that are new to watching this, or maybe haven't seen this before, there's things that need to be said there. Okay, so now let's just fully jump into the article here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just read through its findings and everything else, and then discuss some things that might be like guidance that's coming to me as we read this, etc. But yeah, let's just dive in. So here we have forecast corroboration July 5th to August 1st, 2026. Why it's July 5th is just simply because the month doesn't end. It's exactly at the end of the week. And so this week, or the first full week of July started July 5th, and then it ended August 1st. So that's why it's like that, okay? It's not anything weird. Just look at a calendar. Okay, so we're going to start here. So it says sovereignty, shifting alliances, hidden files, and financial accountability. Research cut off August 1st. So across 4 weekly forecasts, one storyline repeated with remarkable consistency. Nations would turn inward to reestablish sovereignty and boundaries, then reconsider trade and diplomatic relationships. Public revelations would expose older conduct in hidden partnerships, and the resulting scrutiny would increasingly focus on money, government systems, and public resources. The month's news produced several strong correlations with that sequence. The most specific were a forecast naming Donald Trump and anticipating a major domestic communication shortly before his July 16th primetime address, and a forecast about government agencies creating a financial drain that was hidden in the books shortly before a Pentagon audit revealed duplicate records, extra zeros, and distorted spending priorities. Trump's move to rescind Syria's state sponsor of terrorism designation also closely mirrored the repeated image of a previously outcast country being reconsidered as a partner. There are important limits. A matching event does not prove astrology caused or predicted it. A forecast can match the form of an event even when the claims made during that event are unsubstantiated. Association is not proof of collusion, and anti-money laundering review is not proof of money laundering, and a proposed financial structure is not proof of corruption. This review therefore separates timing, subject matter, and factual validation rather than treating every resemblance as an equally strong hit. Okay, and this is where it can get a bit critical, and I appreciate that. However, I do want to highlight here, a matching event does not prove astrology caused or predicted it. One big thing that I do regarding astrology, and that my guidance has been, is that astrology does not cause things to happen. It is how that energy is used. We have free will, we have control, we have power over manifestation, etc. like that. You can go to my website, mysticalmark.ca. What is astrology? There's a section there that explains my guidance on that. I will not get into it here, but I like that it kind of brings that up in a sense that, yeah, it's probably saying that it doesn't prove that, what this guy's saying is correct. It's probably leaning in that direction, but at the same time, it's also goes along with what I say about astrology. It's not things aren't forced to happen. It's how that energy is being used. There's certain themes and things come up in certain ways. Okay, it's about kind of like how things happen within a specific environment. All right, and in this way, it's a specific energetic environment. Okay, but you still have free will, and you can still create and do what you want within that. Okay, so obviously the forecast videos, it shows all my 4 videos for the week there with the links. Excuse me, timestamps below are approximate and linked directly to the relevant pages. Transcript wording has been lightly punctuated for readability without changing its substance. Okay, so method and rating scales. So it goes, this comparison treats transits as building and waning influences rather than single day switches. So if you read the prompt, I've put it in there and I describe it in there how transits build and wane. The reason for that is because, well, they build and wane. Transits build up, they peak, and then they wane. Not everything is going to happen at the exact peak or the exact time of that transit. That energy exists basically within a window time frame where it builds and then wanes. It's like like one of those charts that go like woo-doo, but the energy is still there like the whole time. All right, so it doesn't have to happen within that exact specific conjunction at that exact point in time. There's an energy window where it's going to be relevant. Okay, that's my guidance on it, and I think most people who would do astrology would really agree with that. Okay, maybe not, I don't know, but for me, that was my guidance on it, and that's how I put this in there. And when I do these videos, even for myself, what I feel from it is overall energetic themes for the week, and they tend to kind of move into each other from week to week as well, which is, I think, why it's important, because I do weekly overviews like this on my website as well, but I'm starting these monthly overviews because I think it's important to see how things relate and then how that differs from the actual weekly overviews when I do them in that way. Okay, so events within the weekly window receive the greatest weight, while adjacent developments are included only when they clearly form part of the same unfolding story. A pre-window event is identified as context rather than counted as a match. Okay, so the ratings are qualitative. Very strong, unusual specificity, in subject, form, and timing. Sorry, there's too many of the same vowel sound in that word. Unusual specificity in subject, form, and timing. Okay, very strong. A strong rating is multiple concrete correspondences with some interpretive latitude. Moderate, a real thematic parallel, but broad language or a common event type lowers specificity. I can see that word is in here a lot, and you're going to probably hear me stumble a lot, so I'm sorry. Inverse, the forecasted principle became prominent through a conspicuous failure to embody it. I see this as not necessarily a failure, but with the inverse of it being like the energetic themes were there, but instead of moving, or let's say manifesting in a positive direction, it manifested in a negative direction, or somebody was using those energies in a negative way to create a negative manifestation instead of a positive one. Okay, so that is a distinct differentiation with that and how astrology is used too. You can use astrology or use these energies or these themes in bad ways. You can also use them in good ways. This is why I look at certain aspects like squares and oppositions. They're not bad. They just really just push you to take action on things, and they don't have to surround negative events either. They can have a positive effect and influence. We just have to consider, the situation, who's creating it, who's doing it, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and then of course, there's an open rating, which the forecast explicitly concerns a longer period that cannot yet be evaluated. So it's providing with a monthly scorecard here. So we're seeing it'll be the reported forecast theme, best forecast anchor. So it's giving the links for the video at the timestamps, principal July manifestation, and the assessment. So I'll go over this briefly, and then it breaks it down a lot more. So we're going to go sovereignty, domestic boundaries, and rework trade terms. It's giving the videos there, and then it's showing India held out for better U.S. terms. U.S.-Mexico talks tested, USMCA, abroad U.S. tariffs prompted resistance. It's showing its assessment was a very strong recurring theme. A previously outcasted country reconsidered as a partner. The U.S. initiated the process of rescinding Syria's state sponsor of terrorism designation. Assessment is very strong. Trump makes a major domestic communication connected to shocking material from the past. Trump delivered a July 16th primetime address built around declassified 2020 election material. Assessment very strong, event form match, claims not substantiated. Old files, hidden conduct, and elite relationships come under scrutiny. Epstein file disputes escalated. Kathy, I don't know how to say her last name, past Epstein communications drew renewed scrutiny. Strong with major evidentiary cautions. Government institutions caused financial strain visible in records or books. A Pentagon audit found duplicate assets, extra zeros, and distorted maintenance priorities. Very strong. Hidden partnership, financial incentives, and a public break with the old arrangement. FIFA's proposed $20 billion investment vehicle triggered a Confederation revolt and was abandoned. Okay, strong. economic and resource wounds intensify. IMF warned of an energy shock drag. Oil rose near $94. A tariff conflict widened. Strong but broad. Respect each country's identity and perspective. U.S. government presentation used an AI map that mislabeled every African country. Strong inverse manifestation. Okay, and my guidance on this is it's pulling this and trying to relate it. But my guidance on this is that's not really what that energy was kind of meant for. There's something else going on here with that, but we'll still discuss it as it's trying to relate it. But they're saying that, yes, it isn't what they were talking about initially, but that is a negative or inverse manifestation of that energy. So it is kind of, they're saying it is correct in getting that, but that's not the intent of, or the original intent of the reading that they were trying to provide with this. And it's showing late window shocking financial communication. Reuters reported August 1st that a Friday filing said Capital One had closed more than 300 Trump-affiliated accounts after an ML review. A moderate to strong, no finding of illegal laundering. A longer restructuring arc through December 2026 and March 2028. July supplied possible opening examples, but the forecast period remains unfinished. And of course, that is labeled as open. I was talking about my last week's forecast there, where I talked about the nodal shift in Saturn retrograde, which are, of course, longer arcs where we're not going to fully see the manifestations of that or the effects of that until they happen. Okay. So the month's backbone, sovereignty before cooperation, what the forecast said. The first forecast established sovereignty and practical self-determination as the month's foundation. It described the need to stabilize the domestic sphere before reopening borders or boundaries. Linked Neptune retrograde to national identity and sovereignty, and anticipated countries reworking business, trade, and contractual relationships. The idea continued after the new moon's forecast domestic new start. The third week returned to the need to respect countries' cultures, identities, and domestic choices. This was not a forecast of isolation for its own sake. The repeated structure was establish boundaries, clarify identity, and then cooperate on revised terms. Okay, so what happened? The trade news repeatedly enacted that structure. On July 13th, Reuters reported that India felt able to hold out for a more balanced U.S. trade agreement. New trading relationships and a more diversified export base had reduced the pressure to accept unfavorable terms. This closely matches both sovereignty and the forecast expectation that the newer partnerships would strengthen negotiation power, and it links the article Reuters, India holds out for better terms. And I'm going to open this link in a new tab just so you can see, oh, it's done by AI, they probably made it up. It's the article right here. Literally right there. You can see Trump shaking hands with, so, okay, let me just close this. Sorry, I don't know his name. Where does it actually say U.S. President shakes hands with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Okay, and I'm sorry if I said his name wrong. Okay, so on July 21st, the United States and Mexico resumed bilateral. And of course, when I bring up that, maybe people don't trust AI or whatever, I give you this stuff so that you can do this yourself. You can reference it yourself. You can use a different AI to do this, whatever. I honestly take this, question it all you want, put it out there, and see it for what it is. And I implore you to do that, not just with my stuff, but with other people's stuff and with everything else in your life as well. Question it. Question. Okay, because the only way you're ever going to get to the truth or true understanding of things is if you ask the questions. All right, now to continue. On July 21st, the United States and Mexico resumed bilateral USMCA discussions without Canada. The talks placed a trilateral agreement governing roughly $1.6 trillion in annual trade under visible strain. Links to the article there. On July 24th, the United States imposed new forced labor-related tariffs of 10 to 12.5% on 60 trading partners covering nearly all U.S. imports. Several partners challenged the breadth and fairness of the action. On July 28th, Brazil requested the World Trade Organization consultations over the new U.S. tariffs, an institutional assertion of national economic interests rather than passive acceptance. A July 1st U.S. decision not to extend USMCA beyond its present term belongs just outside of the forecast window, so it should not be scored as a hit. It is relevant background, however, it has established the review and renegotiation environment that became active during the 4 forecast weeks. Okay, so its assessment, very strong recurring theme, no single trade dispute would be unusual enough to carry this comparison. The strength comes from repetition and sequence. Several governments asserted domestic interests, bilateral and multilateral agreements were reopened, and countries searched for greater leverage through diversified partnerships. That is very close to the month-long forecast architecture of sovereignty first, revised cooperation second. Okay, their second major point here, outcast countries and unlikely partnerships. What the forecast said. So this was the most persistent and unusual image across the 4 transcripts. The July 5th forecast described countries previously prejudged or outcasted being reconsidered as partners. The following week went further. A reluctant or awkward partnership could form because an overlooked country was recognized as having been in the right in some respect. The third forecast again saw unlikely negotiations occurring out of public view and warned against rejecting nations merely because their system choices were different. Okay, and of course it links out to the videos here. So for example, I can open this in a new tab and we should pull up the video here at that time frame. We're going to have Juno in the semi-square to Black Moon Lilith as well. And of course, this is from the first week. This is about not allowing other countries, etc., to be outcasted based off of, like, how we maybe thought, oh, this country is like that, or oh, that. It's like not being like racist or xenophobic or things, not outcasting people in those ways, allowing people to be respecting people for who they are, their sovereignty, their individuality, etc., not outcast. Okay. So you kind of get the idea that that's the start of the general theme, and then it links out to other videos as well. And there's a lot surrounding that Juno retrograde that came through in the month there too. So, and then of course there's the other video links. So there's the week of July 12th, July 19th, etc. So if you want, you can further go through those. There's a lot in this article to cover, so I'm not going to pull up each and every video link, but just so you know that they are there and it is referencing them as such. Okay. So what happened? The clearest literal parallel came on July 8th when President Trump notified Congress of his decision to rescind Syria's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism. A mandatory 45-day congressional review was still required before the change could become final, but the notice represented a major step toward reintegration after decades of isolation. Link to the article there. Other developments broadened the partnership theme. Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey expanded their Black Sea mine countermeasure work to protect critical infrastructure. Practical alliance formed around shared security needs. The United Arab Emirates, ADNOC, expanded its long-term energy partnership with South Korea. Britain and Switzerland announced a trade agreement designed to deepen services and investment ties. U.S. officials said on July 22nd that U.S.-India trade agreement could be signed within 3 or 4 months, despite India's insistence on better terms. Australia and Singapore signed an energy security and supply chain pact on July 27th. Brazil and South Korea agreed to advance talks on South Korea-Mercosur trade agreement. The U.S. Treasury removed 84 people and companies from sanctions list after a review. Removal is not the same as diplomatic rehabilitation, but it fits the broader motif of previously excluded actors being reconsidered. Saudi Arabia unveiled plans for a multinational maritime defense coalition at the end of the month. Representatives of 43 countries and the European Union attended the meeting, while 14 countries formally supported the coalition. The initiative was still preliminary, but it was another example of states assembling practical issue-specific cooperation in a fractured environment. And of course, all of the news articles are linked there as well. And of course, the assessment here is very strong for Syria, strong for the wider pattern. The Syria decision is an unusually direct match to the language of an outcast country being allowed back into relationship. The other agreements do not all involve formerly excluded nations, so they should not be treated as identical hits. Collectively, however, they substantiate the broader forecast of practical, sometimes unexpected partnerships forming around trade, energy, and security. So yes, there did tend to be that theme throughout the weeks, and it did really pick that up with obviously the news stories here, and the big one being Syria. Okay, so number 3 here, the name trumped communication, exact form disputed substance. So I'm going to first, before we get into any of this stuff, obviously Trump, there's a lot of, with Trump, you either love him or you hate him. Okay, so, and I'm just saying with this, whatever comes up here, because I do mundane astrology and it relates to geopolitical economic stuff, that yeah, he's going to show up here. Okay, this isn't any kind of political affiliation. You need to make your own decisions on who you vote for. Whatever that is for you, that's for you to decide. That's not for me or anybody else to tell you. Okay, that is for you to make up your own mind on your own. This is relating to the astrology, what I received through guidance as to what would happen that week. Trump is doing a lot of things, and if so, of course, it's going to show up a lot, okay? So that is why. Okay, there is no association with any political figure, Trump or otherwise, included here. All right, so this is just based on the astrology and what happens then in the real world as it relates to that, or from my forecasts that come up, or what I'm trying to do here in this comparison. Okay, so anyway, the name Trump communication, exact form, disputed substance. What the forecast said. The July 12th to 18th video made the month's most specific near-term statement. At 8:05, Mark said he was specifically sensing Donald Trump making a significant public communication connected to domestic awareness and capable of influencing other leaders. The phrase grand communication followed at 8:18. The same forecast, okay, usually when I burp, they're saying like, pay attention to this. So we'll have a look at those links in a minute here. The same forecast anticipated shocking awareness connected to the past, 29-25, and raised the possibility of old government files becoming part of the revelation. So I'm just going to pull up this first link here, open link in new tab so that we can see what it was. I don't even fully remember what I said. I feel like there's a bit, maybe like, I get a sense of Trump again, like there's this communication moment or bringing awareness to something. I just see him like speaking out about something, like there's maybe a grand communication of something. But in general, I get this politically, obviously this is mundane astrology, so this is like geopolitical, that kind of stuff. But I get this political, this aspect of where there's an awareness through communication that is brought through in whatever way. And I'm being drawn to the fact that this is very much still related on a domestic front. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to the article here. So we can see what I said. And they're wanting to say, I believe at that point in the video, I was talking about the Sun-Mercury conjunction. And what they want me to bring up again with this is the fact that there is, in astrology, there's people that talk about Mercury combust, or planets combust when it's around the sun. And my guidance on this and is basically that it's BS. Okay, that conjunction to the sun should be treated as any other conjunction. Okay, and that even within orb of that conjunction, of like a standard conjunction, it should still be considered the conjunction as Mercury almost like directly conjunct the sun. So the fact that big announcement, because it didn't come out until, what was it, like Thursday or something? The 16th, I think the date's in here, July 16th, and the week is 12th to 18th, yeah. So, but what I'm sensing now, and they're saying, yes, it is still related to that Sun-Mercury cazimi or conjunction, in that it's highlighting the bigger aspects of communication in terms of the domestic way. Okay, so they're still saying that yes, that was still playing a relevant role even at that time. Like, what was that, like 4 days later or something, after that initial conjunction had happened. Okay, so we're still within that conjunction window, and so it's still occurring in that. They're saying that there were other things that played a role there. Obviously, there's other parts to the video here. There's other things that played a role, but the bigger communication aspect of it was still related to that. I get a sense that the guidance was it was technically actually supposed to happen earlier, but it ended up happening on Thursday. I don't know. I feel like it was just like mundane, like there was delays in being able, when they were able to do it or something, because it was a primetime address, something like that. Like I said, I don't know. That's not provable from me or whatever, because obviously only the people behind the scenes that do that shit know and understand that. So take that for what you will, but that is my guidance on that. Okay, so what happened? On July 16th, inside the forecast window, Trump delivered a 25-minute primetime address devoted to election security. He presented recently declassified documents as evidence of serious vulnerabilities in foreign involvement in the 2020 election, framing the material as a shocking revelation about the nation's past and future electoral safeguards. The White House had placed the speech in a national broadcast slot, making it substantially closer to a grand communication than an ordinary press remark. The factual caveat is essential. Reuters reported that the released material did not substantiate the claim that China had altered the 2020 vote, and intelligence assessment found no evidence that foreign actors changed vote counts. The Associated Press likewise reported that documents did not support the broader fraud narrative advanced in that speech. Again, I leave that up to you to assess all of that information for what it is. However, I was getting it as what the astrology was showing me, and so whatever in that video and whatever comes through is whatever it is. Okay, we're just going to move on from there now. All right, but however, the assessment of this very strong literal event match, weak or contrary factual validation. So of course, again, it's up to you. Some people would think like, oh, well, the media, they're being the media, so they're not saying they're going to go in one direction against Trump because they don't like him, or that this evidence is what, but okay. Again, that's up to you to question and decide for yourself. That is not up to me. That is not up to anybody else. Okay, you guys, you've got to understand that on your own right and question that in your own right and come to your own conclusions regarding that. Okay, but I'm just saying how it is related to the astrology here. Old files, concealed conduct, and the question of who was connected to whom. Okay, so what the forecast said. The second forecast anticipated hidden manipulation or control coming into view, followed by old government files, evidence, and possible legal action. The third week repeated the image of old deeds and lies entering the spotlight and explicitly asked who was in cahoots with who in older partnerships. Week 4 carried the same language into a larger systemic frame. I did notice this as well as I'm doing the weekly videos, that this kind of was a thing. Things were still kind of this idea of things coming up to be seen, who was connected with whom, etc. So what happened? So the month's continuing fight over Jeffrey Epstein records supplied the clearest news parallel. So on July 9th, New Mexico's Attorney General accused the U.S. Justice Department of obstructing a state investigation by refusing to provide unredacted files concerning Epstein's former ranch. On July 15th, the Justice Department said court orders, grand jury secrecy, and victim privacy obligations prevented it from handing over unredacted materials. Only a small, largely public, and heavily redacted set had been provided at that stage. On July 30th, Reuters reported that Goldman Sachs had questioned former top lawyer Kathy, again, I don't know what's their name, about their Epstein contacts in 2023, 2025, and 2026. She had stepped down after Justice Department records revealed extensive communications and gifts, and she testified before lawmakers on July 30th. On August 1st, reporting indicated that the Justice Department appeared to have missed New Mexico's July 31st deadline for further production. Okay, and all the links to the news articles are there. Okay, so assessment, strong thematic and timing match, but not proof of collusion. Old official records, privacy disputes, legal demands, and scrutiny of elite relationships remain in the news through all 4 weeks. That is a strong match to the forecast topic. It does not establish that every named person participated in wrongdoing. Communications, gifts, or professional contact can warrant scrutiny without proven criminal conduct, and the Justice Department offered legal reasons for withholding unredacted records. The responsible conclusion is that the forecast accurately described the month's disclosure conflict, not that it proved the most serious interpretation of that conflict. Okay, so it's basically just giving a PR statement for itself. But basically, and what I want to get with this as well is, again, use your own discernment and come to your own conclusions on this. Don't just listen to what this says. Don't just listen to the astrology. Don't just listen to the news. Ask the questions and come to your own conclusions on this. Okay, and listen to your own gut on things as well. So number 5. Hidden in the books, the Pentagon audit and public resource accountability, what the forecast said. Late in the July 19th to 25th video, the language became exceptionally specific. Mark described government agencies or institutions, so again, pay attention to this, that had created economic strain or a drain on resources with the problem concealed in the books. He then narrowed the impression to American government spending and taxpayer money. The following forecast again connected a shocking communication near August 1st with money, resources, or taxpayer wounds. So let's pull up the original one here. I'll just take a look. Come on. And nearing the very end of the day, we're going to have Venus in the sesqui-square to Chiron. There's something regarding action steps of people from government. This feels like other agencies or something. Feels like there's nefarious people that were involved in doing certain, whether it's physical things or something related to that have caused, it feels like financial strain or a drain. And that can't be swept under the rug. Where there's an awareness of this, of how we've been deceived, and now there's certain people, or it feels like institutions which contain certain relationships of people, etc., that were doing physical, material things that existed as like certain government agencies or whatever, but that caused a financial wound because they were a drain, but they were an unknown, almost like maybe not, it was like hiding it in the books somewhere, kind of a thing. And that's but this sesqui-square is showing it can't be swept under the rug any longer. We're aware now, or we may not be aware yet, but it is coming to awareness, based on whatever this is coming through here in whatever way. So that's Thursday the 23rd. Let's move on to Friday the 20th. Okay, so another thing that I want to point out here, and that that was in the video, is that was the aspect that was occurring there was a sesqui-square, a sesquiquadrate. Now that's not in astrology traditionally one of the major aspects. However, again, my guidance has been on this, is that all aspects are equal, are the words that I'm getting right now. All aspects are equal in that all aspects should be accounted for. You can't just say that, oh, these are the major ones and these are the minor ones and these have less of an effect or whatever. They're saying all aspects have the ability to carry forward something, and especially something like a sesqui-square where it's like technically like a super square or a square and a half, that's really going to push for something to occur. So they're saying that all aspects are important and that it shouldn't really be categorized as major and minor. They should all be considered when doing this. And I consider as many as possible. There's certain astrology applications that will only show a certain amount of what are considered minor aspects. So I do it as much as I can to an extent. It also makes the videos a lot longer when you take into account all those aspects. But they're saying that it's still important because they do play a role. Okay? Now, with that being said here, let's just go with what happened. So on July 22nd, Reuters reported on a U.S. Army audit drive that uncovered duplicate vehicle records in plausible quantities caused by extra zeros and bad data that distorted maintenance, barracks, and hospital repair priorities. The Pentagon manages close to $1 trillion annually and has never completed a clean department-wide audit. The state target for its first clean audit is 2028, and there's a link to the article there. This is the closest subject-level match in the entire month. An American government institution, public money, a resource drain, and faulty information literally located in accounting and asset records, published during the forecast week. Other July accountability stories reinforce the theme without matching it quite as precisely. So I think they're broadening this out because it started the 25th, but there was more stuff that came in later videos here. Now, I want to point out that there was something that happened that week. I believe it was the announcement of the cost of the Iran war, I believe was what happened that week. And I think that was more of a specific thing that was occurring as maybe a money or taxpayer drain in terms of as it related specifically to the American government. Because if we kept watching that video later on, there was more stuff there on the next day in terms of the aspects. You can go back to watch that if you want. So that was something that was coming up. I don't know if it's mentioned here, but there's obviously other things that are coming up here. So I'll go over these, but that was one thing, and it did come up in the weekly assessment as well for that week in terms of that. So other July accountability stories reinforce the theme without matching it quite as precisely. So in a court filing reported July 24th, the Trump administration acknowledged that $7.6 billion in clean energy grants had been canceled based on the political identity of the recipient states. That admission conflicted with earlier public explanations focused on project economics and investment merit. A July 27th State Department Inspector General July 27th State Department Inspector General report found staffing, information technology, and guidance gaps in the hurried transfer of 1,504 U.S. aid awards with $51.5 billion already obligated. Officials disputed some implications and described measures taken to manage the transfer, but the watchdog's findings placed institutional controls and public funds under scrutiny. In Nigeria, reporting throughout July traced how a purported government agency obtained official recognition, office space, and accounts using forged documents. A budget line of roughly $1.3 billion, I'm not sure what that currency is, had appeared, although Nigeria's budget office later said that no public funds were released. That distinction matters. It was a major systems and records failure, not evidence that the full appropriation was paid out. Okay, and there's the links to the articles there. So its assessment was very strong. The Pentagon report aligns in timing, country, institution, mechanism, and consequence. The additional cases show that public resource accountability was not a single isolated headline, but a wider monthly concern. The Pentagon match should nevertheless be treated as the principal evidence rather than inflating the score by counting every spending controversy as a separate fulfillment. Again, I'm going to mention here that it left out what it brought up in the weekly ones. If you go and look at that for that July of that week, of the amount that was paid for the Iran war. And I feel like that was part of more specifically what it was for that week. However, over as a broader theme, I think it picked up a lot of these other things relating to how it relates to the other weeks as well. So number 6, financial incentives, opaque partnerships, and the FIFA revolt. What the forecast said, the final weekly video emphasized allegedly harmful partnerships and the practical actors carrying out an agenda for financial incentives. It then described old partnerships ending or being rejected after the arrangement became visible. So what happened? On July 28th, Reuters disclosed FIFA's proposal for a new entity, FIFA Football Enterprises, valued at approximately $20 billion. Outside investors could have acquired up to 20%, potentially bringing in about $4.2 billion. European football officials objected to what they viewed as an opaque process and a shift of control over major competitions toward private capital. The reaction was swift. On July 30th, UEFA and its 55 national associations moved to boycott FIFA tournaments, while other confederations and player representatives opposed the plan. By July 31st, FIFA had backed away from the investment structure following the resistance. The Associated Press provided additional context on the governance objections and the potential investors surrounding the proposal, and there's links to the articles there. Assessment is strong. The sequence financially motivated partnership revealed questions about transparency and control, institutional actors breaking with the proposal, and the arrangement ending. Closely mirrors the final forecast structure and occurred entirely within its window. The caution is equally important. Critics alleged opacity and governance risk, but the reporting did not prove a secret criminal partnership or nefarious collusion. I think all the people that rejected that may disagree, but sure. The strong match to the controversy's form, not to an unproven criminal interpretation. Okay. So again, it's being very, I think, objective in what it's doing here in terms of its assessment. However, it still assesses it as strong. So number 7, leaders speak, then act, defense, and coercive policy. So what the forecast said, the first video anticipated leaders putting their money where their mouth is and following public words with concrete action. The third forecast again described a political or government verbal call to action followed by action, especially around sovereignty and defense. You can see the video links with their timestamps there. So what happened on July 8th, the United States and Iran resumed direct strikes as Trump said the possibility of a diplomatic deal was over. There's a Reuters link there. The same day, Trump said he ordered all trade with Spain cut off over NATO spending in the Iran conflict. The rhetoric softened on July 9th after U.S. officials received more information about Spain's NATO contributions, illustrating that dramatic words can be followed by action or revised after political review. On July 22nd, renewed U.S.-Iran strikes and threats to Gulf infrastructure pushed oil prices towards $95 per barrel. Assessment moderate. The events fit the speech to action and sovereignty defense themes, and their timing is close. The language is broader than the Trump address or Pentagon audit forecasts. However, the leaders translating statements into policy is common. This deserves corroboration, but not the same weight as the month's more distinctive matches. I think maybe the reason why that I felt so strongly in guidance to say that during the astrology video and what I'm getting now is that a lot of the times political leaders will say stuff, but they won't actually do anything about it. You know, like the idea that they go up and they talk, oh, we're going to do this, oh, we're going to do that, and then they end up either, maybe they do it, but it's half-assed, or they don't do it at all, or people call them out on it and they kind of ignore it, things like that. So I think this was more on that, and I don't think it quite picked it up in terms of its research in that way, because it was stating, oh, well, they usually just say what they're going to do. Well, I think there'd probably be a lot of people that would disagree with that in terms of, you know, people get heated about political debates and stuff for a reason in a lot of ways, although now more so for other reasons than this. However, traditionally, it could be viewed that maybe politicians don't take as much action as maybe they should. Right, which I think is why that was coming up for me in that way, and I don't think it did the best job on this. I'd have to look back at, well, it came up multiple times during the month, though. I have to look back at certain weeks to see maybe more specifics on that. But yeah, that's one of my criticisms towards this. However, I still respect it for trying and bringing it out in this way. And again, I'm being reminded to say that it's doing this in a way that maybe a human that was doing research, trying to look at this objectively, would take it in, right? Especially someone that doesn't know astrology or someone that doesn't really normally look at this kind of thing, they're going to look at it with more of a critical eye and try to align it in maybe different ways. Let's say I would or somebody else would that's typically used to doing this, which I think is good for something like this because, again, it allows that aspect of questioning and seeing things from different perspectives in order to try to understand it. Okay, now moving on here, we'll go number 8, the material wound, energy prices and uneven economic pressure. So what the forecast said, the first forecast linked revised trade partnerships with healing economic or material wounds. Week 3 returned to people struggling economically and anticipated government action directed at money and resource wounds. The final forecast again tied the revelation cycle to money, resources, and taxpayers. So what happened? The International Monetary Fund's July 8th World Economic Outlook update projected 3% global growth for 2026 and 4.7% inflation, emphasizing the economic shock from the Middle East war and its uneven effects. Energy importing and lower income countries faced heavier pressure, while food and fertilizer risks were especially concerning for vulnerable economies. The pressure became tangible when oil approached $94 on July 22nd amid U.S.-Iran strikes, amid supply fear. Sorry, that's the cat. You're okay, kitty. Don't worry. At the same time, the widening tariff confrontation created further costs and uncertainty for businesses and consumers. So assessment, strong but broad. Economic pain and resource pressure clearly formed part of July's international story, and they interacted directly with sovereignty, trade, and defense because economic wounds is inherently broad and always has potential examples. The match gains its strength from being integrated with more specific tariff, energy, and government accounting forecasts, not from the economic language alone. Okay, and I would agree that that's a fair criticism in terms of that as well. But it's also hard when you're dealing with a broad global scale as well to break it down into more specifics, especially when dealing with certain things. But again, I have brought up specific things, but they usually are for specific countries. We do have to remember that. Okay, so number 9 here, we have national identity through an inverse event, the Africa map failure. So what the forecast said, respect for national identity was not incidental. The July 5th video stressed respecting boundaries while working together and not outcasting countries because of prejudgment. The July 19th forecast emphasized respecting each nation's culture, domestic choices, and perspective. Okay, so what happened? On July 30th, Reuters revealed that a U.S. State Department presentation at a global conference had used an AI-generated map that mislabeled every African country. Wow. The department accepted responsibility and said the image had misrepresented African partners. Assessment, strong inverse manifestation. This did not fulfill the forecast as an example of respectful cooperation. It made the forecasted principle conspicuous by violating it in an unusually comprehensive and public way. Treating it as an inverse manifestation is more accurate than calling it a conventional hit. So I would state that this really wasn't anything specific to, again, what I was intending. So I do this on a much broader, global political coming about kind of a thing. So this is more, it's not good that this happened, obviously. And it's obviously through a presentation, U.S. State Department presentation. But this is more of in terms of a scale of events, more of a minor type of event, and typically wouldn't, I wouldn't have hit on it so much in focus in a video. But what they're kind of saying is that, what they're saying with that is that they didn't intend for this to be a part of that. Like I said at the beginning of the video, they're saying it is technically a negative manifestation of that same energy, but that wasn't what they were implying when we were doing the forecast. Okay. So we'll move on here to number 10, August 1st, a precisely timed financial disclosure. So what the forecast said, the final video signaled out August 1st for a potential shocking communication with emotional impact connected to money, resources, or taxpayer harm. It also described the week as a prerequisite for a larger process rather than a complete resolution. So I don't think that shocking stuff was specifically tied to financial. But I know that there was other financial stuff that had occurred. That entire week itself was basically what came through was basically the energies that had shifted that week were going to play a much larger role in a longer time frame than specifically for that week. But let's see what it has to say here about this. So what happened? On August 1st, Reuters reported that Capital One had said in a Friday court filing that it closed more than 300 accounts connected to the Trump organization after a months-long anti-money laundering review. Reuters described it as the first bank to formally connect its account closures to such compliance concerns. Capital One, explicitly did not accuse the Trump organization of illegal money laundering, and the disclosure itself was part of continuing litigation rather than a financial adjudication. The same date also brought reporting that the Justice Department had apparently missed New Mexico's deadline for additional Epstein records, linking the end of the forecast window back to the month-long files and disclosure theme. So yeah, there we go. Now it's relating it back to that kind of a thing. So assessment, moderate to strong. The timing, financial, revelatory form are striking. The subject only partially matches taxpayer harm, and an AML review. I don't know. I don't remember specifically saying taxpayer for that week. I know it was before, like with the Venus part, like the Venus sesqui-square. So this could be another thing, maybe, and I could be completely forgetting and missing something here. This could be 100% correct. So let's actually have a look, because I could just be misremembering it. So let's have a look here. Happening. So let's move on right into Saturday, August 1st. We're going to have Mercury here. In semi-square to Uranus. This is affecting us all. What I get a sense of this is hitting home, as in it's hitting home within our own hearts, our own selves, etc. The communication, it's hitting us emotionally. Communication, awareness, maybe shocking things, etc. We're being hit emotionally in a lot of ways with whatever is coming up in this time frame. Through awareness, through the chaos, there may be anger, there may be all kinds of other things. And that's being made aware of as well. Yeah, I'm not going to go on any more with that. We're also going to have Venus in biquintile to Chiron. Again, this is dealing with these dirty dogs and how they've screwed with our money, our resources. They've caused a wound to our resources, money, etc. Whether this is taxpayer money, even charging us taxes in the first place. Okay. Don't get me started on that. And just a whole lot of other things. Okay, so I did mention that. So that's fair. I had just forgotten. But they're saying it's not... okay. Okay, they're saying it is related to... Okay, let me just see. On August 1st, because when would I have done that? Yeah, that was near the end of the video. part of a larger process. Okay, so they're just trying to remind me of that it's not accusatory. They're bringing up that there was an aspect of money law, but I think that they're saying that there's more to look into here than what is currently being shown about this situation. They're saying that yes, but that there's more. It's not really fully how we understand it to be in this way right now, which is why they're wanting me to question that. Okay, so fair enough. Okay, so let's look at longer transit overlap. So what built and waned across the month. The combined transcripts show that the weekly readings were not four sealed compartments. Several slower overlapping transits supplied a continuous background, while the faster lunations and Mercury phases changed where the same underlying issues became visible. Well, I mean, yeah, because the thing is that Mercury, I believe, was in Cancer most of the time. It was staying, and especially through retrograde shadow, etc. And I mean, I think it even talks about it here, Mercury direct. So that those same themes were, of course, going to come up, like changed where the same underlying issue became visible. Yes. So in relating to the retrograde. So it's kind of okay. Because it's saying several slower or overlapping transits supplied a continuous background. Okay, while the faster lunations and Mercury phases changed where the same underlying issues became visible. Okay, I'm questioning this because typically if you have the faster things, that it's going to shift. However, we did have a Mercury retrograde stationing direct and then leaving, obviously moving through post shadow. So, which is where we get the same underlying issue become visible. So now this is showing up right here. It may not have fully worded this very well in terms of what it was trying to do. Because I mean, yeah, several slower overlapping transits supplied continuous background while the faster lunations and Mercury phases changed where the same underlying issues became visible. However, it's good that it mentioned this because obviously we're relating to retrograde energies here, which would make sense. Okay, so forecast transit framework. Neptune retrograde and sovereignty. So how the theme carried forward: national identity, independence, and clarity about domestic boundaries remained the premise beneath all 4 weeks. So India's negotiating posture, the USMCA strain, new tariffs, and Brazil's WTO challenge repeatedly placed national autonomy against existing international arrangements. So Venus in Virgo and practical cooperation. The forecast framed partnership as practical work by officials rather than sentimental unity. That motive continued through the unlikely partnership language of weeks 2 and 3. Energy, supply chain, trade, and maritime security agreements were transactional and problem-specific. UAE, South Korea, Britain, Switzerland, Australia, Singapore, and the Black Sea Task Force. Okay, so new moon, Mercury Cazimi, and Uranian revelation. A domestic reset was paired with a message or realization that made older material newly visible. So the transit was explicitly described as peaking and waning rather than belonging to one exact day. Trump's July 16th address used declassified material to frame a domestic reset around election rules. The Epstein record dispute simultaneously kept older government files under pressure. Mercury direct, awareness becomes action. Week 3 shifted from revelation toward practical response. Changed partnership and action on financial wounds. The Pentagon audit converted an abstract accountability theme into specific records and operational corrections. Trade partners responded to U.S. measures through negotiations and formal challenges. Saturn retrograde, nodal shift, and Aquarius full moon. The final week was presented as a trigger that exposed the roots and networks beneath earlier events, with consequences extending beyond the weekly window. The FIFA proposal revealed a financial/governance structure, generated collective institutional resistance, and ended rapidly. The pattern is plausible opening illustration, not validation of the forecast through 2028. This transit view clarifies the month's internal logic. Sovereignty did not disappear when the first week ended. It became the reason countries renegotiated partnerships. So it's talking about, obviously, the Neptune thing there. Revelation did not end with the Trump address. It narrowed into files, relationships, and accounting records. The final week, I would say that was highlighted by the Sun conjunct Mercury thing and things surrounding that. But there were also other aspects to Mercury, especially with like that I think Mercury semi-square Uranus and other things that would have related to that as well as Mercury's shadow. So not just that point in general. The final week then widened those specific disclosures into questions about systems, incentives, and collective resistance. The news correlations are therefore strongest when treated as one building and waiting thematic field, not as isolated attempts to assign a different headline to every aspect. I would also like to say that the news isn't going to fully cover everything, especially like behind the scenes motives, those kinds of things. A lot of news, depending on where you get it from, can also be biased in a lot of ways too. So we may not get the full story or full understanding of certain things, so it may not fully relate to certain things. But it's still important to take it and compare it and question those things as well to determine, what factors are involved, who could be right, etc. Okay. So how the 4 weeks combine into one longer story. Seen separately, each forecast contains broad symbols that could attach to many headlines. Seen together, a more disciplined sequence appears. July 5th to 11th define sovereignty and boundaries. Nations reassess what they can support domestically and begin revisiting trade or diplomatic terms. July 12th to 18th, the public message makes older material newly visible. A domestic reset is linked to revelations, official files, and reluctant cooperation. July 19th to 25th, follow the relationships and the money. The focus moves from what was said to who worked with whom, which institutions created the drain, and what the records reveal. July 26th to August 1st, the pattern becomes systemic. Partnerships built around money or control face public awareness, resistance, and possible termination. The week acts as an opening trigger rather than an endpoint. Now, it's summarizing this here, and I want to bring this up now, in that, and especially as it related to the AI story before, for those of you that do not trust AI or whatever, it has certainly come a long way and it is a very useful tool, which is why I use it here. But for those of you that don't trust it, you can take my forecasts and do this work for yourself and relate it for yourself. And in fact, if you want to do that, I implore you to do so, to question it. I'm saying to question. I do this because I don't have a team of people to do this, and I don't have time to go out and do this. But if I do it myself, then it's like, oh, well, you're the one that did the forecast and now you're bringing up the news story, so it's going to be biased. Whereas if I have something else like AI or somebody else to do it, then it removes the bias, okay? And in doing so, makes the view a bit more objective instead of maybe biased either one way or another. All right, which is another point in doing it this way, is then something maybe too critical and trying to force a conclusion, saying, oh, it's not astrology. Someone who's into astrology or whatever could be forcing it to be that way, whereas maybe having something like AI do it, which is maybe a bit more generic, that can actually look at it more objectively, is maybe the better option in doing it here. Or just having people from both sides do it and then combining certain things, or I don't know. I don't know the perfect solution to this, but I'm bringing this up to show at least that there is at least some validation to this. Now, to that point, as I said at the beginning of this video as well, is that you're not always going to be right. However, anyone that's doing this with any amount of integrity and from a trustworthy source or whatever, there's going to be at least a certain percentage where you're going to have those hits, where you're going to have that understanding that, hey, they said this and it actually came up. Hey, this came up, these energetic themes are here, and yeah, things happened surrounding those themes, or yeah, it happened in this way. So there's going to be some evidence that exists within that, even if certain specific things or certain other things didn't come about due to other people's free will choices, etc. So there's still going to be things that are able to be verified, even if you are not correct 100% of the time, which you won't be. That will not happen. There may be the odd time that that does happen, but nobody is going to be correct 100% of the time. Okay, and again, I do not have all of the answers either. I'm not putting myself out there as like, oh, whatever. This is just a cause for people to begin to question things and to be careful of, the information that they take in, and to question, no matter where it comes from. All right. Okay, so I can read its kind of final paragraph here. The news followed comparable progression. Did I read this? I don't think I did. The news followed a comparable progression. So trade, sovereignty, and new bilateral alignments dominated the opening half. Trump's primetime speech in the Epstein record dispute put old official material into public circulation. The Pentagon audit then provided a concrete books and taxpayer money manifestation. Finally, the FIFA controversy moved from a proposed investment partnership to multilateral resistance and collapse in only a few days. While August 1st reporting on the Capital One filing extended the financial disclosure theme into the final date. The overlap matters because it prevents double counting. The forecast did not produce 4 independent hidden information hits. They developed one repeated revelation / accountability motif. And that is one thing that I did notice when doing the videos, is that there was that recurring theme that kind of kept going and building. It wasn't just 1 week. It kept going. And what I get a sense of, it's still going to keep going as well. The fair's conclusion is that this motif was strongly corroborated by several different kinds of July news, with the Pentagon report providing the most exact concrete expression. What remains unverified or should not be claimed? The longer transit horizon is still open, and this is where it gets critical. Okay, now I haven't fully read this still, but obviously we're at a point here where it's looking to get a bit more critical. So the July 26 forecast described Saturn retrograde as continuing toward December 10th, and the nodal storyline as extended to March 26, 2028. Now I have read part of this already, which is why I said this is where it gets critical, but I haven't deeply read as I'm doing now, okay? I'm just so you know. July can only be assessed as a possible opening chapter. It cannot validate a forecast whose stated horizon is still more than a year away. And yes, I get that and I understand that. And I said that in that video as well, that this is the beginning of something of which we haven't lived yet. Okay? Behind the scenes, benevolent actors cannot be independently verified. News reporting can document meetings, policies, audits, and filings. And I'm getting the sense of is that it also cannot verify the intent of things. There is intent put forth towards certain things coming to fruition that we may see as negative but might not actually be negative, or we may see as positive but might not actually be positive, or the media reporting it as positive but really the overall further effects might end up being negative, or we may see, oh, this is negative now but really it actually turns out to be a positive thing in the future. Okay, there's those kinds of things as well. The intent is more of an energetic thing. You don't fully understand someone's intent behind it unless you are that person or you're in their close circle and know and understand what it is that they're doing. Okay, so that can't be brought through the news in this sense either. All right. So yeah, it usually cannot establish intuitive claims about unseen motives or spiritual purpose. The Trump speech existence does not validate its allegations. The event matched the forecast form and timing, but the released material did not substantiate the central election manipulation claim. Connections are not automatically collusion. The Epstein, FIFA, and banking stories all involve relationships or institutional risk, but the available reporting does not prove every suspected motive or criminal interpretation. However, I leave that up to the people to decide for themselves, okay? Not every major July event belongs to this comparison. A rigorous review should exclude headlines that require stretching the transcript beyond recognition. The purpose is to test correspondence, not to make the forecast unfalsifiable. Overall assessment. Overall results, strong thematic corroboration supported by several unusually specific event matches and balanced by clear evidentiary limits. The most persuasive correspondences were Trump's July 16th primetime address, the named person, weak communication scale, domestic focus, and declassified past framing matched closely. Declassified past framing matched closely. The claims made in the speech were not substantiated, so this is a high-quality event form match rather than a factual vindication. The July 22nd Pentagon audit, the forecasts American government taxpayer money and hidden in the books language aligned with exceptional precision. Syria's July 8th status change process. The U.S. initiated rescission of a designation that had long treated the country as an international outcast, directly echoing the repeated rehabilitation partnership motif. The mandatory review meant the change was not yet final. The July 28th to 31st FIFA reversal. A large financial partnership proposal became public, encountered institutional revolt over transparency and control, and was abandoned with the final forecast window. The month-wide sovereignty and alliance reset, India's negotiating stance, the USMCA tensions, new tariffs, WTO resistance, and a series of energy, trade, and security agreements gave the recurring sovereignty plus partnership theme substantial real-world depth. The least settled portion is the longer-term claim that the final week initiated a restructuring extending into late 2026 and 2028. That can only be revisited as the period unfolds, and I plan to do a full yearly one of this as well when that time comes. The bottom line is that not every July headline fulfilled the forecast. It is that the combined weekly readings identified a coherent sequence, sovereignty, revised alliances, revelation, financial and institutional accountability, that appeared repeatedly and sometimes with very high specificity in the month's news. They want to say that they also can't tell you everything in one video. They're trying to manage the larger things, the larger points, the things that people are going to notice the most, and not just absolutely everything, because that's too much to put in one video, especially when you're talking on a global scale. Okay, so they want to make that clear that obviously not every news story is going to relate, because it can't, because I didn't mention everything that could relate to it, because that's too much information to put into one video. Okay, which is why they hit on more of the bigger hitters instead of just trying to get everything. All right, but good for it for picking that up, I guess. The strongest case for correspondence rests on those precise sourced examples, so the credibility of the analysis depends just as much on preserving the caveats. For more on how these comparisons are approached, okay, you can visit the legitimacy and corroboration page on my website. So where I obviously do this, the prompts are there, you can do this, and of course here's the sources, full copy and paste links, so there's the forecast videos as well as all of the news related sources that exist there. Okay, so that is going over it for the entire month of July. So let me know in the comments what you thought of this. I'm thinking of doing these monthly, for every month going over my forecast, putting this out there to say that, hey, look, I'm willing to go over my own work, criticize it, and maybe put it out there for other astrologers or other people that do this to actually do the same. To, in essence, and what came up in the weekly forecasts with the Mars and Gemini as well, to put your money where your mouth is. But you do have to remember that you're not always going to be right, but there will be at least something there to show that you've got something, okay? And again, I am not trying to put myself and be like, oh, you should only listen to me. There are people out there that really honestly do legitimate stuff, and like I said, they're being drowned out by a lot of other people that are not, okay? And that's part of really what this is. For one reason, and another reason is to just force people to question. Like, just question. There's so much confusion. There's so much crap out there. Like, be critical of things. And yeah, if you are critical and you end up with the same result as you people were saying from the beginning or whatever, then good. That shows that there's some weight to that thing, whatever it is, that there's concrete evidence or whatever that could occur there. But we need to kind of put ourselves more in that space. And part of me doing this as well is my guidance is that a lot that we consider to be spiritual is actually just higher level sciencey stuff of how the universe works that we just don't yet really fully understand. And that science isn't willing to look at because they think of spirituality as woo-woo, and spiritual people aren't willing to look at a lot of maybe the sciencey stuff because they think it's too critical of whatever else, and both parties are in their own camps and they're not willing to come together in some way, when really if they did, we might actually have certain corroborations for certain things. And I know that there have been like studies done on other things, like maybe as it relates to psychology or whatever, in terms of maybe our intuition or spiritual connections and things. There have been, but it's not really mainstream. It's like maybe certain people know of it, but there's not a lot that's mainstream. And by holding people to account in this way and saying, okay, let's question this, let's, put this out there, because this in a way can also help us to improve our understanding, as in maybe what rules of astrology are legitimate, what rules aren't, how can we question things, and also learning especially what comes through in my guidance is the limitless creativity of the universe, and that it doesn't necessarily, there's no specific hardcore, when Venus is in whatever sign, it must mean this. It relates to whatever, which is why I do these intuitively. When things come through intuitively, it's not exactly always relating to the concrete astrological definition, which is part of why I'm doing this too, to show that, hey, maybe we need to question also how we do astrology, how we do these things, right? And that doing it intuitively says, hey, this is the creative use of this energy in this way, and that maybe we need to be more lax on our definitions and those types of things, etc. But I'm kind of being called to end it here for now. If you've made it this far in the video, please leave a purple heart. Please, I always mess this up at the end. Please leave a purple heart in the comments so that I know you're a real one. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Take care, everyone. Bye for now. Bye.